Ladies and gentlemen, the game of chess is fascinating for a variety of reasons. But beyond the game itself, the format of the top championships is unique only to chess and doesn't exist in any other sport. What am I talking about? Well, in chess, we know who is going to play for the World Championship match about 6 months in advance. That only really happens in individual combat sports like boxing or mixed martial arts. And to get to that championship fight, we never see the combatants anywhere else, really. In chess, it's not the same. The two players who play for the World Championship could meet leading up to the World Championship. And that's fascinating because they have to decide what openings to play. They hide some of their preparation for later on. But you still want a psychological advantage, and that is a very long-winded way of saying in this video, I'm going to be showing you 3 games between Gukesh and Sindarov, who recently played in Warsaw, Poland, in Rapid and Blitz. They played 3 games against one another, and a lot was on the line. These guys are young guys, 18, 19, 20 years of age, and they will play for a world championship later this year. Like, who's going to get an early edge? What's the feeling out process? Who is a little bit more nervous, as we get into these games? So they played a 25-minute game, which is a lot of time. And then they played 5-minute games, which is not a lot of time, right? So Rapid and Blitz format, I actually didn't even think it was 5. I thought it was 3 plus 2, but that's neither here nor there. So first game, Sindarov with the white pieces versus Gukesh with the black pieces. We're going to be getting a whole month of this later in 2026. Sindarov opens with e4, and I don't know if we're going to see this in the World Championship match, but we get a Caro-Kann defense. I mean, really? Caro-Kann at 2800 level in 2026? Amazing. Now, you will notice that their ratings are really low. That is because, well, I don't want to make any of you feel bad. Those ratings are really low relative to their classical ratings. These are their rapid ratings. Sindarov against the Caro-Kann defense plays knight f3. Generally, when you play knight f3, you then follow it up with knight c3, and therefore it doesn't matter. That's called the 2 knights variation. But Sindarov plays d3. Now, I think in the database, this is called the Breyer variation, B-R-E-Y-E-R, and it's basically super meta chess. You want to trade pawns and then trade queens. You want to lose the right to castle, which looks idiotic for anybody watching this below 2400. Like, why would you leave your king in the middle? Well, the meta here is that actually losing the right to castle is not as bad as the pawn on c6. Black now doesn't have easy development. If black plays c5, that's actually a huge weakening of the position. And just after a few more moves, knight c7 is a problem, so you have to go defend it, and then bishop f4 is a problem, and black is nearly lost, but can survive. And that's the reason that people nowadays don't even, they don't play into the endgame. They go queen c7. Of course, developing a queen before any other piece, exactly like we taught beginners, other than the Scandinavian defense. Now we have a trade, and this also looks a bit stupid because, like, okay, white can go d4 now, and it's an exchange Caro-Kann where white lost a move and black got an extra one. But white goes c4, so trying to take advantage of the pawn on d3 instead of d4. Very, very meta stuff. You got to be, high-rated. You got to be very high IQ to understand this. Knight c3, Gukesh plays e6, voluntarily blocking his light-squared bishop. But obviously the pawn on d3 for white is a big problem. It's not able to move forward. It has to stay supporting this. Gukesh wants to play bishop b4 and castle very fast. Sindarov plays g3. Since his bishop cannot come out this way, it can only go to g2. So far, both guys are still comfortably within the realm of their opening preparation. The bishop goes to b4, applying pressure to the knight. The bishop goes to g2. Now, here's the problem with white's entire setup. White just stopped guarding the pawn on c4. He just completely gave it away. Because if it's taken now, first of all, you could just castle. You could just castle. And after pawn takes d3, the position is actually shockingly okay for white. Even though white is down a clean pawn, white gets what's called initiative. Every move you make comes with a thud. You attack, you put pressure, the queen has to move, then you get more pieces in the game. Knight b5, knight c7, you're developing, you're creating threats all the time. You have what's called compensation for the sacrifice pawn. But none of this actually happened. Bishop g2, he did take on c4, And it got even crazier because Sindarov went here. He left his king in the center, and after queen a5, applying pressure to the knight, like at this point, I'm thinking you're going to castle. Why else would you leave the king in the middle for that long? Clearly, white has a lot of development. No, Sindarov actually took on c4 and allowed the capture. So bishop takes, pawn takes, queen takes. He thought for a while here and played knight to d2. So this is the position, this is the type of chess that both of these young men bring to the table, uncompromising, very sharp, very theoretically well-prepared, great memories on the both of them, probably taking their, mushroom-based supplements or whatever is the new hype, for brain, lion's mane. I have no idea. None of this is, sponsored by any product. It's just all the stuff that I'm seeing now on the internet, probably getting 8 hours of sleep, tracking it on 4 different devices. And here, white, again, is just to move away from getting a fantastic position. The queen is way too far offside, and black goes e5. So stretching the position even thinner, the queen guards the pawn, hits the bishop. Sindarov plays rook c1, attacking the queen. That's a very natural move. It has to stay guarding the pawn. Gukesh goes here, and now the bishop can go to g5 to threaten to damage the structure. So with black, you could do something about it. Gukesh understands that now you have to play very energetically and very precisely. If you play knight bd7, you permanently lock your bishop out of the game. So he moves the bishop first. Here with white, I'm considering f3 or queen b3. Every move needs to come with an attack on something. So Sindarov goes queen c2. That move is a little bit too passive. Maybe queen b3 would have been a bit better, but it was clear queen b3, he wanted to keep the knight protected, I think, so he could castle, and this bishop could maybe take the knight. Knight c6 also comes with a thud. Knight d4 is there. Knight b4 is there. Sindarov plays castles down to only 6 minutes on the clock. And Gukesh also castles. Also castles. Very ready for, for this. Sindarov kicks out the bishop. And here white has several ways to play the position slowly. You have the bishop pair, powerful diagonal, maybe c5, knight c4, go to d6, put pressure on the queen side. Or you can do what Sindarov is going to do, damage the structure of the king, knight to e4, and f4 with a hammer. He's ready for the attack. He wants f5. He wants to seal out the bishop. Like, if black goes here, he just loses. F5, the bishop gets sealed out. The queen attacks the bishop, and then the queen makes it over here, and black can basically just resign. So Gukesh has to play f5. He has to meet Sindarov in the center of the ring. Octagon, hexagon, decagon, nonagon, dodecagon, whatever. However many sides there are to this, fictitious arena in which they are battling. f4, f5, the knight goes in, and he seals out the light-squared bishop of Sindarov, but that wasn't the best move, because there's a check now on the king. And Sindarov is preparing active operations with g4. He already could have played it. The queen's now repositioned a little bit for battle. Sindarov sacrifices his knight. I mean, this move is a gamble. There was absolutely no need for this. In fact, I think Sindarov just got overly hyped, because for a moment, Sindarov had 7 minutes on the clock in this game. 3-8. So Sindarov was down 3-8, and a little bit earlier, he was down 7-16. He was down a lot on time. And then you go a little bit closer here, and Gukesh has 40 seconds. 40 seconds on the clock. It's not enough time. It's just looking like Sindarov is going to pull away here. Sindarov goes ballistic, sacrifices material to just attack like crazy. But then Gukesh gets some... Wait, I don't know... What? Well, I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know if Gukesh can bend time. Sounds like he doesn't have 40 seconds on the clock. I don't think they just gave him back 5 of the seconds. All right? My justification for playing knight takes e4 for Sindarov was going to be, Gukesh has 40 seconds on the clock. He's obviously gambling to put clock pressure on his opponent. If the man had 5 minutes on the clock, I have no idea what Sindarov is doing then. Then I guess Sindarov just thought he was winning with rook d1. He obviously thought the bishop wasn't going to be able to re-enter the game. I'm just trying to get in his head. I have no idea. I wouldn't have sacrificed the piece if the time was even. That's pretty bold. He can play like g4 even, for example, to try to weaken the position. All right, Sindarov's just a lunatic. Nothing new. I mean, you gotta live and die by the sword. He's just down a piece though, and he continues the attack, and Gukesh's final pawn saves the day. Now the players are in a time trouble, but there is no mate here. There is just no checkmate. Every square important near the king is covered. And, well, Sindarov tries his best to take Gukesh's head off, clearly feeling like he was the favorite. But Gukesh, very clutch in the time pressure, and he's going to win this endgame. I mean, he's the world champion. I think he knows how to win a game of chess up a piece. He will win this pawn. He'll win these pawns. He's going to keep some pawns, and he's going to win the game. Yeah, Sindarov did not need to sacrifice material. This was a very complicated game until he played knight takes e4, and even then it was complicated. He obviously just thought he was winning. This is a preview of the chess that we're going to get later in the year. Obviously, they're going to take a little bit less risk. There's going to be a lot on the line. There's not a huge amount to take away. In the blitz portion, Gukesh played e5. So he was like, I'm going to keep things very solid. I'm not going to play the Caro-Kann. We had an Italian. We had a 4 knights symmetrical Italian. This looks like school children who are rated 500. This is how beginners play chess. Or adults who are beginners. You're just develop all the pieces. And then they copy each other. And then they literally copy each other some more. Just a3, h3. I just don't want to be pinned, with the bishop and this bishop. Now Gukesh breaks the symmetry and plays a5. a5. He doesn't want to play a6. He doesn't want total symmetry. We have bishop e3. Looking to trade the bishop. If this trade happens, white secures more control over this square and also opens up the f-file. And that's actually beneficial, which is why Gukesh brought the bishop back to a7. And Sindarov castled, Gukesh castled, and now Sindarov played d4. So all of this, you set up a little center, pawn, pawn, knight, knight, bishop, bishop, pawn, pawn, castle. And then when you're ready, you make a pawn break in the center of the board, and the game obviously begins to open up. So both guys move the rooks in the middle. We have now c6 controlling some central space, and maybe the dark squared bishop can reposition on the long diagonal. Queen goes here. He wants to bring the rook. Knight leaves the center, so the rook attacks the pawn. Rook goes to d1. He doesn't care about this pawn. Not afraid. If knight takes e4, there's probably tactics. The first one I see is this, and bishop f7. And king f7, queen f3 check. And you would win the rook. There's always tactics. In particular, on things that are only defended by the king. Double check those squares. They might not be protected enough. We have queen e7, and that is an inaccuracy because white can now play knight f5. It's clear that Gukesh saw knight f5. When you play queen e7, the first move you see is knight f5. He obviously calculated something here after bishop takes f5. I think his reasoning was after pawn takes, there's a move, like maybe knight f8, and he's solid. Not solid, because after bishop takes a7, and this long sequence of moves, you simply lose the pawn on d6. Obviously, some hallucination there. He is not going to make mistakes like queen e7, knight f5 in a world championship match, but queen e7 was played with a very clear intention of simplifying the position down to something meaningful. And he didn't need to do that. He could have played a lot of moves. Bishop d7, bishop b8 to defend this pawn. Could have, created ideas of knight h5 slowly. Like, if the queen were to ever sidestep over here, knight h5, knight f4, obviously knight h5 immediately would hang the knight. Anyway, he went for this long sequence, and, Sindarov just won a pawn. And, well, we're going to see if Sindarov can convert this position. He plays f3, 2 ideas, 3 ideas. Stop this, kind of continue to prepare this, and also the king will come to the middle. That's how you have to play the endgame. King f2, g4, very nice. Rook d4. Now let's watch how an elite player converts an endgame. He's not Magnus, but, he's still very strong. g5 is going to play at some moment. c4 removes the knight from the middle. c5 wins control of certain dark squares in the position, and g5 removes all control for black. Black now cannot defend the middle anymore. He trades, he has to move the knight, and Sindarov is now up 2 pawns, very dominant. Knight d4, loses another pawn. Rook a8 is mate, basically. You're going to lose all your pieces, and Gukesh resigned. This was, compared to the first game, in the first game, it was very tense, and it was a position where, the guys could have had an hour on the clock. It was so complicated. The moment where Sindarov sacrificed the piece, even here, the game could have gone on for a long time with g4 or queen h5. And then Sindarov just kind of went for it. I thought because Gukesh had low time. But no, it was because he thought this position where the pieces were so far back was good for white with very strong attacking chances. It was an interesting sacrifice, but a little crazy. In this game, Gukesh just kind of lost. He just allowed knight f5, misevaluated the position, and Sindarov got a game back. And so that brings us to our third and final matchup. Now, you cannot really take away a lot of things from Blitz, but we will see. You know, we get another e4, e5. Now we see Sindarov with the black pieces for the first time. Knight to f3 and knight c6, right? Bishop to b5, a6, bishop goes back, and now d6 and bishop d7. This we very well could see in a world championship match. Nowadays in the Ruy Lopez, black can play almost anything. So historically in the Ruy Lopez, you know, black would play, first of all, black could play the Berlin. And the Berlin is everywhere now, originally popularized in the 2000 World Championship match. The knight attacks the pawn, white can enter the Berlin, or white can refuse the Berlin. The Berlin is still very prevalent. But if you're going to play a6, bishop a4, now black can play anything. Black can even play this line, which was seen in the World Championship match, Magnus Nepo. Black can also play knight f6 and then try to play d5 in one go. Black can play knight f6, bishop e7 lines. Black can play knight f6, bishop c5 lines. Black can play knight f6, knight takes e4 lines, or knight f6 and not knight takes e4 lines. And black can play basically everything else. Knight e7, bishop c5 immediately, g6, f5, and d6 and bishop d7. d6, bishop d7 is known as the Steinitz. I think d6, bishop d7 is known as the modern Steinitz. You basically just block the pin. So now bishop takes c6 for white is kind of a non-factor. The knight can also move into the middle. If d4 is played immediately, you trade all the pieces. So that is how you play. And in a perfect world, you also play g6, bishop g7. So you kind of turn it into a Piert, King's Indian, fianchetto, just very interesting type of position. We could see this in the World Championship. We very well could. c3 to try to play d4 is played. g6, d4, bishop g7. I love this line for black. I think this is a very cool way to play the Ruy Lopez. If you are looking for a nice new opening to take down to your local club and beat up children with, you don't need an opening. You can just use your fists. For legal reasons, that's a joke. Yeah, it's very good. Rook e1, centralizing the rook. Knight f6, knight d2, and castles. We have a very rich position on our hands. Very non-typical. You know, normally in the Spanish, the pawn's on d3, the bishop's kind of back on c2. Black played b5 and c5 and this type of stuff. So white also went h3 to prevent the pin. But this is a very different type of position. So knight f1. Knight f1, I mean, self-explanatory. Keep the bishop open. Very typical idea in this opening because the knight doesn't go to c3. So you try to reposition it this way. Sometimes you even reposition it this way. Pawn takes d4. Pawn takes d4. Black kicks the bishop back. And after this move, black is actually better, according to the computer, which is quite fascinating. Whereas if we back up just a little bit, I think here you needed to go h3 to prevent this idea of bishop g4 entirely. And the ensuing position, like this, is just very nice for black. Black is pressuring a lot in the middle. So if you take on f3, like this, knight d4 is a problem, and after bishop e3, black can move this knight to d7 or to h5, and it's a, actually h5 is even better, allegedly, because you control more squares here, and you can kind of follow up with your queen in the future. Knight d7 is obviously very reasonable. Rook c1, and bishop takes is the move played by Sindarov, but Sindarov here even could have went queen f6, which is an absurd move. Queen f6 looks ridiculous. You almost don't want to play a move like this, because ultimately what happens is you want to take and take, but if you take and take, like this, and then you take and take and take and take and take and take, that looks really bad because you allowed this counterplay, but this is just a good position for black. It's very rich here. You're going to get this bishop. You have a lot of pressure with your bishop. Anyway, the safer move is bishop takes f3 because white now has to take like this. That's a little bit ugly. And again, this is very indicative of the type of chess that's coming. Broken pawn structures, imbalances all over, bishop pair versus versus the side that's chomping down the center, versus a very healthy center. Queen f6 is targeting the pawn. The pawn now is dead to rights. It has to move. Or you can play this idea of bishop b3. So Gukesh could enter the endgame and trade a bunch of pieces, but that's not Gukesh's style. He attacks the knight. He wants the knight to move. The knight moves. It's attacking f3. The pawn goes forward. He's using all of his weaknesses against Sindarov. He invites Sindarov to gallop over to c4 with the horse, where it targets the bishop, but more importantly, the pawn on b2. Now here with white, obviously you play pawn to b3. It's very easy, right? Play pawn to b3, the bishop has to be taken. Now black gets the bishop pair back, and white takes with the pawn. These guys are crazy, man. Like, he voluntarily turns this pawn into an F pawn, and then this pawn, so then this pawn and this pawn go forward, and the other F pawn becomes an E pawn. So the entire structure blobbles over. Is that a word? Wobbles, blobbles this way. Like, these guys, I mean, they just play such complicated chess. Now the pawn structure looks like this. White's king is horrendous looking, but the bishop is better than this bishop, but this is a huge weakness. I have no idea how you will protect this. Knight c5 is always met with b4. You either have to play b4 or a5 yourself. Sandarov goes rook e8. That's apparently a bad move. Apparently black needed to go queen e7 immediately to open up the bishop. But okay, rook e8 is played. Gukesh plays knight to g3. Now he plays rook c8, which is just too passive. Like, instead of rook c8 again, you needed to go here and knight c5 and maybe even h5, h4. But he goes rook c8. The queen goes to g4, forcing the queen back at this point. And now the queen goes back to f3, which is not a good move. Here you needed to go bishop b1 or d3. The idea for black was to move his c-pawn. Sandarov actually found a way to move his c-pawn, because after c5, if you don't take with black, if you go here, the pawn's just going to move. And it's going to become a pass pawn very quickly. So you have to take en passant. If you take en passant, he's going to go knight b8. You can't defend the pawn. If you can't defend the pawn, this is really looking bad now for white. White lost a lot of control here. The king is weak. I don't know. So clearly, Gukesh didn't like that. So he kind of brought his queen back. I don't know, but still this move is possible. He obviously wanted some tactical ideas on c6. He wanted the queen maybe out of the way of h5. But he's in a lot of trouble here, as now rook c6 is possible with no knight b8. Here comes rook c6, and Sandarov is activating the pieces. Bishop b2 just wins material, because you have to move your rook. It has to keep the bishop protected. Bishop b1 now, and rook c5. Look at that. That's called to quote Robert Hess, the great commentator and grandmaster, that's a collinear move. Moving the piece on the same line, but not taking the piece you could take. He wants to be taken, so that his knight could land there, and it's a very comfortable square over there. Now, b4, targeting the rook. We're getting our first ever real Gukesh Sandarov time scramble. Now, in the first game, it was a time scramble. They did have low time, but one guy had an extra knight. In this position, it is a low time game, and the position is roughly equal. Sandarov plays rook c4. Another collinear move, looking to trade material and create a pass pawn. So the boys have a minute to play out this position. White can create some chances with a4, b5, try to win this pawn with rook c1, etc. Bishop goes to c2. What will Sandarov play now? Bro, he's crazy. He could play so many moves here, like bring his bishop, bring his knight. The man sacrifices his d-pawn. He's completely opening the position. Another transformation of the structure. We got this, and then we got this and this. The whole pawn migration is happening in that direction. Gukesh doesn't like that. He doesn't want to allow queen takes b4. Or Sandarov launches another pawn attack. He's just using his pawns to demolish the position. d5, a5, b4 under pressure, a3 under pressure. A lot of decisions here to be made. Rook b1. He chops this down, and then he plays knight b6 defending his position. You can still take on d5 with white, but then there's going to be queen takes e3. So we do that. Pawn takes, queen takes e3. We have an endgame on our hands. 4 pawns a player, opposite colored bishops, which will always benefit the side that's actually doing the attacking, because then it's really difficult to defend. White has 2 passed pawns, d and b. They can both walk. Black has 1 passed pawn. Who's better here? Like, if you don't have an eval bar, how do you determine who is better? You have to look at the quality of the pieces, how active they are, and their future prospects. You also have to think about the structure of the pawns. Yes, white has 2 passed pawns, but white has B, D, F, and H. Not B, D, F, and M, which would be the orange line in New York City, the trains. White has 4 pawn islands. That probably is not good. The bishop is much more passive than this bishop. I'm definitely getting a sense that after a move like pawn to f5, white is going to really struggle to make any move here. White goes d6. Gukesh. Rook c3 attacks the bishop. Where's it going to go? Apparently bad. You should have played bishop d4. The bishop goes here. That's why we needed to play f5. But now we play f5. Now where does the bishop go? Does it go to c6? Does it go to g2? Obviously, it should go to c6. Apparently, white's position is already so bad. You have to sacrifice the bishop to try to promote your pawn. That's crazy. No chance anybody finds that in a time trouble. fe4 allows d7. You have to give away your knight. If you don't, knight e4 attacks the bishop, and then it wins the rook. And that's the real problem. So he had to go rook d1. Nobody's finding that. He goes bishop c6. And after rook d3, the pawn's in trouble. The bishop goes here. Sandarov has won one of the pawns. Now he has a good position and an extra pawn. Rook c1. And now the rook defends. Knight e2 back. Rook attacks the knight. The king goes to protect. The pawn moves. The rook is going to take everything here from Gukesh. Now black is up 2 pawns. The bishop goes back to d3. Knight d5. Rook takes b1. Bishop takes b1. There is a small miracle waiting to happen, but it's not going to happen. Not only is it not going to happen, you're just going to promote. You're just going to promote. And this bishop cannot move anywhere. You talk about one of the worst bishops in the history of endgames, you are looking at it. White could maybe play knight c1, c2, bishop a2 check. Doesn't matter. You take it, and you go here, and then you queen. And even if this could happen, this is losing, because 9 times out of 10, if you're down pawns in a king and pawn endgame, you're losing. If it's 2 to 3, you're going to lose. The king could go this way or this way. Makes no difference. You will lose. So, in the final tally, Sandarov won 2 games. Gukesh won 1. Now, what would have happened in that first game if Sandarov hadn't sacrificed the piece? Who knows? What would have happened in the second blitz game if Gukesh hadn't just lost a pawn out of the opening? Who knows? Overall, their scoring was the same. In this format, the rapid counts more. So the rapid counted for 2 points. Each blitz game counts for 1 point. I like what we saw. I especially enjoyed that we got 3 very imbalanced games. We got a really strange Caro-Kann, which immediately blew up, right? Then in the second game, we had the Italian, which was weird. It was a very weird Italian, and then it immediately became sharp. The center open, knight f5 was possible, and actually it ended much faster than it needed to. And the third game was a sideline of the Spanish. Fantastic. Just great. I don't know if we're going to be seeing these guys play each other much more this year. They could theoretically play in some further classical legs, but they are not currently playing in Romania, in Bucharest, which is the next step of the Grand Chess Tour. They could play in the Esports World Cup, but that doesn't, I don't think so. I don't think Gukesh will make it. Sandarov might, but it's also not his strength. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe we'll get 1 more or 2 more classical games max. That's all I have for you today. Get out of here.